Welcome to the MAT evaluation for wheelchair seating. In this video, I will review the steps to complete a MAT evaluation and seating assessment. The MAT evaluation really starts the moment you meet your client. One of the things that you want to recognize is whether the client is able to walk or whether they're currently using a seating system. If they're currently using a seating system, observe his or her function and balance and posture in their existing equipment. You want to make sure that you're looking at your client from the front, the side, and the back. Get as much information from the client during the interview as you can. Be sure to find out their likes and dislikes with their current equipment. It's really helpful to take notes of your client's responses, and it's also really nice to have the MAT evaluation assessment and measurement form with you. The next part of the assessment is completed supine, or with your client lying down face up on a firm surface. This allows for the assessment without the influence of gravity. It's important to note that you may need two people, especially if your client has any difficulty with moving or holding positions. It's also really important to note their transfer status. How did they move from their seating system to the mat? In this part of the evaluation, you're going to be assessing the pelvic, spine, lower extremity range of motion and flexibility. You want to also make sure you make a note of their skin status in this position. So when you begin this part of the assessment, you're going to start at the pelvis. The pelvis is the key because it's the base of support in sitting. You're going to take your hand and place it under the lower part of the spine. Then you're going to gently try to anteriorly tilt the pelvis. You want to make sure that you're noting if they have any flexibility or movement in that position. If they don't and they're fixed, are they fixed into anterior tilt or posterior tilt? You also want to look at the pelvis for the flexibility into rotation and lateral flexion. So with a hand still somewhere on the pelvis, whether it's on the top or underneath, you're going to begin to flex both of the hips. And it's okay to move the legs together because this is an assessment for seating. So once the pelvis is in an optimal position, as close to neutral as possible, and the knees are flexed, we're going to assess the hip-pelvis relationship. So you want to look at flexion, abduction, adduction, and internal and external rotation of both of the hips. And you're going to note any restrictions. Remember that the end of range of motion is when the pelvis starts to move. So you make sure you want to note on your form any restrictions on either of the legs. The other thing you want to do in this position is make sure you look at the ankle. You want to look at plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, and eversion. So once the pelvis is in your optimal position, you want to also look at their maximum hamstring length by looking at knee extension. So with the hip and the pelvis in that optimal position, you want to look at what is the maximum hamstring length. And you want to measure that. You want to measure it both at the hip and at the knee. And again, it's really helpful if you have another person. It makes it go a lot faster. And they can actually help you with all of your alignments. You want to look at that on both legs. So then the other thing you want to do is start to continue up the trunk and up the spine. Now your hips and your pelvis are in as close to optimal position as you can get. And then you want to look at the trunk. Are they contacting the surface on both sides, or are they rotated? Do they have a shift or a kyphosis where they can't touch their shoulders to the mat? The other thing you want to look at is scapular excursion and position on both sides. Upper extremity range of motion, again on both sides. Then the other thing you want to note is how does the arm influence the head? When you move the arm, does the head change positions? Then you want to look at the head range of motion. The other thing you want to do in this position is take some critical measurements. We've already talked about the hamstrings, where you're looking at the maximum range of motion. The other thing you want to look at is you want to measure the firm surface to the back of the knee. And if you're using the form that was given to you, this is M. So you're looking at the seat depth on both legs. The other thing you want to look at in this position is chest depth, chest width. Chest width is B, and shoulder width. Again, it's really helpful to have your form and to have somebody else helping you with taking measurements. Then the last thing you want to make sure that you want to do before you change positions is looking at their skin. I'm not going to do it here, but you actually would really visually inspect their skin, paying particular attention to the weight-bearing surfaces, their bottom, their back.